Okay, welcome back. This is Dino the Ops Guy, episode 3. It's this is kind of new to me. I mean, I'm used to preparing for classrooms or corporate situations, and even different styles of teaching and learning. So, for example, when I used to teach, it was a case method, so it wasn't just preparing what I'm going to say, but trying to anticipate what everyone else is going to say. But this is a bit different. It's layered. You got to sort of think in a different way as I'm preparing it, and I'm getting used to it. Hopefully you're getting something out of it as well. A couple things we want to look at today. Really, the play is going to be in three areas, and there's a couple things I want to introduce with first off, the process view. As an ops person, as a production person, this is how I see the world. Everything is a process. So everything looks like this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, then we're going to test this, and then this is going to happen, and we can actually map it out. This is called process mapping. Pretty important. When we get to lean, there's a thing they call value stream mapping, which is really just a rip-off of process mapping. So if you understand this, you'll get the concept of value stream mapping pretty easily. And the whole notion is that let's take, for example, watering crops. We're going to position ourselves, pour the water onto that plot, position ourselves to a new plot, pour the water onto that plot, position ourselves to a new, you'll get the pattern, right? We're going to do this as many plots as we have. If we make a mistake, we'll just carry on to the next one or whatever the case. And once our watering can is full in the middle, we're actually going to have to refill the watering can at some point, maybe a couple times depending on how many plots or how many times we miss, etc. So this is really a process. We call, so most people just say you got to go water the crops. As a production person, I'm thinking, okay, there's a process involved, and we should really analyze the process, and not just in words, but we're going to get it into essentially process boxes or decisions that have to be made. So, for example, if we're going to water the crops, first off, we're going to see, is the watering can empty? Because if it's empty, we're not going to get anywhere. The first time we pour, we're going to know there's no water in it. So then we're going to have to fill it with water. And then we're going to have to position ourselves. And then we're going to have to water the plot. And if that's the last plot, we're done. If it's not the last plot, then we're going to have to go back and say, is the watering can empty? No, we're going to position ourselves and water the plot. Are we done? No. Is the watering can empty? And so on until the watering can's either not is empty or we're done. And this is how most production ops people kind of communicate about what's going on the floor. So to specify, we typically, certainly once we get to a little more of the value stream mapping, have some key numbers that we want to keep in line. The cycle time, how long it takes to do that step, and if there's anything that goes before the step or has to be set up, the time that it would take to do that. So, for example, to water, and we've now consolidated the diagram that I just shown you into one sort of arbitrary box called watering 30 plots. And in this, it's going to take us essentially an hour to water 30 plots. And let's say it's going to take us 20 minutes of game time to go from the front door to wherever that first plot is. Maybe that's a bit much. Maybe we stopped along the way. But we get a feel for, if we're going to communicate this to someone else, how long it takes us to do those 30 plots and what it takes before we get to those 30 plots. So here, the cycle time is going to include the specific time for each position and arbitrarily the time that we've lost for refilling the watering can as well. So in general, we can just use the cycle time, the 30 minutes. So if we know that it's an hour for every 30 kind of thing, or an hour for every 40 kind of thing, that's sort of the range that as sort of a base level watering can, we kind of get into. Then we can use that when we're calculating other things or understanding other things. So um, if we're limited to energy, then it's important to understand how much energy we're using in that point, right? So we know we only have so much energy at the beginning, 270. If we eat food, then we get a little bit more. But for now, if we want to figure out how many plots we can use, for now we're going to be limited by how much energy we have. So at level 0 farming, we're going to use 2 energy units per plot. So 130 35 plots is the max we can do without dipping into more energy sources. So with even if we get more energy, eventually the limiting factor won't be energy, and it'll be, let's say, time of day, or how much water, whatever the case. Maybe there's a limit on the water supply, and in Stardew there isn't. But there could be other limiting factors. But even then, we have to look at what's the limiting factor and what does that mean for our reasonable size of how many plots we can put together. So this gets us to, in the project and the process view, we're looking at all the cycle times and how they stack up so that we can understand what's the limitation on our time for a capacity level. So how much we can do for so much capacity. In this case, how many plots we can water. Alternatively, if it's not a time sensitive, if it's, sorry, not a capacity sensitive thing, we could be sort of one off, not things that we do regularly, where we'll call them a project. In which case, the same diagrams matter, but we're not looking so much at the cycle times as much as the lead times. So we're not looking at the capacities as much as how long it takes to do one, and then how long it takes for that one to be processed somewhere else. So if we're using a process model, then we're going to look at, okay, our limitation is going to be a bottleneck. What's our capacity limitation for the whole set? If we're looking at a project model, then we're looking to look at our critical path. What's the longest, essentially longest tentpole, or longest stack of things that have to happen before we're done? Usually, if we're looking at production, process happens a lot more in the high volume areas, and production is more like construction, or anytime you're doing sort of bespoke stuff or one-off stuff, sort of that project type of stuff. Right? So for example, in Stardew Valley, when we're looking at watering plots, that's more of a process view. But if we're looking at doing the community center, well, I showed you the big project map that I put together for the community center, the big gangly thing. That's more of the approach we'll take for projects. And part of production management will favor one or the other, depending on what industry you're in, but in sometimes will shade into both. So it's good to understand a little bit of each. So, in the watering process, it's important based on what we've seen in the process steps. The biggest thing is positioning and watering and getting there. So, we want to minimize the losses or waste that are in the system already. So, for example, if we can plant the plots close to the door, then we don't have a lot of setup time. We can just go right there. If they're close to the water source, then we don't have to spend a lot of time refilling. And even when I'm sort of walking through, I'm constantly thinking, what's the best sort of walk pattern so that my refill time is minimized? And it's never going to be perfect. At some point, I'll look at a bunch of videotapes of them and sort of compare them. But for now, I'm just happy of, we'll do the sort of the college best try to say, try not to, go right to the end and then refill and then start at the end again situation. So the second thing I want to do is get into what we call a 5S project, and that is part of our situation. We're looking at tappers. We don't have any tappers yet, but they're a really good tool that lead to other things. So the tapper, just to let you know, is what we put on a tree to sort of get the syrup. And ideally, we'd like to have a situation like shown here, where as I get out and I do something that I would normally do, such as, pet my cat or whatever the case, I have easy access or easy visibility to what the tappers are doing so that anytime there's a new syrup available, I don't have to go searching for it. It's obvious, it's there, easy to see. So I want to set up this situation where we have this nice, my early on I'll need maples, so we'll have a couple maples with maple tappers. Later on, it's a lot more important to get the oak, so I'll have my oak trees front and center, and then off to the right here, I'll also have a pine because I want some pine sap, pine syrup, and I just want to set it up this way at the back of the farm. Well, if I'm going to do this, then I have to set it up properly. So we need to organize the area, and that leads to what's called a 5S project. And the 5S's each have a different word. Originally, it comes from Toyota. The lean manufacturing was started by the Toyota system, essentially. It comes from there. So originally, these 5 words were in Japanese. We've sort of made the American version. I don't condone trying to learn a different language to understand production or operation, so we're just going to use the English versions. So it would include first sorting, then setting in order, then shine, or sort of making sure that everything's, in place, clean, easy to see kind of thing, standardize and sustain. So I'm going to walk you through all of these as they apply. So um, a lot of people will think 5S, especially because of the shine and sort and stuff, that it's a project for housekeeping, and it's not. It really isn't. Too often I've been teaching 5S, and I'll have students come back to a project. Well, we want to make the plant tour better. There's no value in plant tours. We don't make money as in a plant off of plant tours. We make money off of other things. In this case, the focus is going to be, are we set up properly so that we can easily understand what's going on with syrups and easily respond as soon as they're ready? Not is the area clean, not is it beautiful, nothing like that. So it's much more than just a cleanup project. So the 5 S's, let's start with sort. Sort, if you're looking at the situation, we got rocks, we got weeds, we got some weeds. The pine tree is actually hiding some weeds. So, the first thing we want to do is get rid of anything that doesn't belong there. That's the sort stage, right? So, the trees, in some cases, may be useful, but in some cases, we just want to get rid of them as soon as we can. Luckily, pine is not the first type of syrup we need, or the first type of sap, I guess, we need. So we can get rid of that middle pine tree, and it'll give us exposure to what else is there. It sort of opens it up. And that's the whole purpose of sort. A lot of times it's natural for people to accumulate stuff. There's the saying in operations or in production that the amount of inventory you'll have will expand to fit all the space that you have to store it. So we want to dispel some of this, or sort of get rid of some of this. In some cases in production, we'll actually use what we call a red tag system, where I'll tag something or make it inoperable with some sort of notice on it. And then after a month or after a couple months or after a year, if it's still tagged, if it's still inoperable, we know we never needed it. So it's a good sort of backstop to say, here's how we can be sure what we're getting rid of is not necessarily. Because if you just arbitrarily ask people, say, oh, yeah, we need that. Well, we don't. So the second thing is set in order. We want to plant the trees where we want them to be designated for later on. The third part is shine. And in that case, I am not trying to make it clean. I'm trying to make it visible. So anything that could obstruct my clarity, my visibility, has to be gone. I usually use the example of fire trucks. I don't know, I've never been a fireman, so I'm not sure, but I get the story that firemen wash the fire trucks every day. And I always sort of come back with, well, what if I could start a company that would wash the fire trucks for them? Would that help? And the answer really is no. The purpose of washing the fire truck is as much to keep it clean and shiny and beautiful and stuff, but probably more importantly, because if you're washing the truck, you're going to see any leaking oil, any broken metals, any rust, anything that is out of the ordinary. And this is what the shine stage is for. Expose anything that is out of the ordinary, anything that is going to get in the way. So we're going to get rid of the center pine. We're going to get rid of the small trees because we don't need any of those. And where possible, we want to be able to see the ground area as clear as possible so that if any seeds come up, we can address them right away. Standardize is the fourth one. And with standardize, we want to essentially create this routine where as we're going to see the cat, we understand, we're going to look here. We're also going to, set it up as part of our regular daily movement or monthly movement, whatever, to create some sort of system around it. Some sort of routine is probably the better word around it, so that we can understand how to use the area properly. And then sustain, really sustain. People think of projects as being closed and independent. There's a lot of stuff that's going to go on in this area. Just off to the left, there's our path north, so we want to keep that clear depending on how much we use it. We may have to keep it clearer than other things. Where that pine tree is pretty much is where I want to put my honey generation. So if I have my honeycombs or my bee houses in front of that, I want that to be sort of considered. The point is, things are going to change in your production, and you want an understanding that this 5S project has to essentially change with it or adopt with it and consider what's coming down the road and have maybe, the two or three people who are involved on a sort of separate committee that you can assemble ad hoc if there's something that's going to disrupt this area. That sustain really comes down to how are things going to change, and does it still make sense to maintain this area the way it does, or do we change it? So the third thing I want to talk about before we get into Av and them running what's going to happen on day 3 is we're constantly looking at comparing potential projects, saying which one is better. Yeah, and typically when you ask an executive or even a sort of a mid-level manager, once they say they want this project done, they feel wedded to it, and it's kind of like their baby. And we have to get past everyone saying, no, mine's more important. No, we need some sort of metrics, some understanding as far as how we're going to compare these projects. And a good way that I find to compare projects is this notion that I have the big easy. So for in this case, on the end of day 2, we don't have a lot of projects in mind, but we could look at, we know that the tide pool bridge there, or whatever it's called, that little the wharf or whatever the case, if we had 300 pieces of wood, we could connect to the tide pools, and that'll give us extra foraging. We'll be able to get coral and urchins, both of which are pretty valuable. So it's an extra source of income. Another thing we could do, either at the same time or independently, is get a bigger backpack. Well, that's going to take getting 2,000, or essentially, if we, wanted to get it, we could, it's the equivalent to spending 1,000 on parsnips seeds and then having it 4 days later. So we can see different paths on how we describe it. But the idea is with 2,000 G, we can get the backpack, and then we're not throwing stuff on the ground and picking it up later, trying to manage our inventory as if it's so constrained. Third one is we could upgrade the axe. That only takes 2,000 G and 5 copper bars. Another one we could look at is How to Win Friends, the accomplishment. So that'll be, you say hi to everyone and then you give one of them a gift. Doesn't sound that hard, but we're going to get 100 G out of it. So if we're trying to compare those 4 projects and say, okay, well, which one, in general, if you have a week meeting, they're going to say, let's do all of them. And everyone says, yes, let's do all of them. And nothing is accomplished. But if you use this tool, the Big Easy, we can now compare them to say, how big is the return of the project compared to how easy is it to accomplish? So big on the horizontal, or on the vertical, easy on the horizontal, and anything top right is more, better return, if you will. And you'll have some situations where a couple projects kind of tied together. So we haven't gotten into the furnace, but let's say building a furnace and smelting our first copper is another project we could do. Well, that would tie right into the axe because we need the copper for the axe, that sort of thing. So in some cases, when we lay this out, some of them will be tied together. Some of them will be completely independent or even, exclusive. You're going to do one and not the other kind of deal. But you can see it laid out with how big a return is it going to be at one or a group, and how easy is it to accomplish to get sort of that return. And then the discussion becomes about, let's place these properly on this Big Easy scale. So we could start with, well, the first one is getting wood for the tide pool. Well, let's put that in the middle. And then we look at the second one. Well, you know what? It would be probably better return if we had the backpack than the tide pool. So it's got to be a little higher. And because it's actually a little harder, it should be to the left. So we're going to adjust the two of them to say, okay, now the tide pool one is a little more to the right, and the backpack one is a little more to the left and higher. And then we get the third one to say upgrade the axe. Well, that is probably a little better return, but much, much harder than both of those. So we're going to put it basically far left and adjust everything there wise. And then with the Win Friends, it's pretty easy. Probably not as easy as the tide pool because we still have a lot of people to meet, but it's not as hard certainly as the other two. But there's not a lot of returns, only 100 G. So then once we have these, we can start looking at them. Once we've established that they're in the right spots, and we can say, okay, which one are we going to do? Well, We don't have any copper bars, and again, maybe we should have another project in there just to make copper bars. So we're probably not going to do that one first. It's certainly on the list, and we can use this list as we carry on. It can be a sort of a living document. The backpack, great idea, but it's probably going to be more of a medium term type thing. There's something we can do before that. And it comes down to, well, as much as friendship is easy, it's not that high a value. Probably the best thing to focus on for us to get a decent return would really be this creating the bridge or making access to the tide pools, because there's some good stuff that can come out of that. So most promising we're going to focus on is tide pool. Cost is going to be 300 wood, and you could say, well, it's Dino, it could be a lot more than that. We could have to buy all the stuff from not Gunther, but the blacksmith. But we're not going to buy it from the blacksmith if we can chop it down. So let's just use it's going to cost 300 wood. But it could give us certainly the extra foraging. I know urchins are usually about 100. This coral starts about 80. You're going to get probably one of each of them every other day or so. So that really starts to add up. Like all together, I'm guessing between 500 and 100 G, 50 and 100 G per day. That's a good return. And we also get the extra foraging experience points, not just from picking up stuff in the future, but all the chopping that we're using to get to that 300 is also experience. So as a project, there's some pretty good return. And this is how we'd use sort of a big easy more as a discussion, as a comparison, so that in a meeting we could get everyone on the same page to say, okay, here's how we're going to move forward. So the last thing I want to get into is the 5 whys. I'm really sort of taken aback by what happened on day 2, that we didn't get the beans. So missing that chance for the beans really has sort of put us behind. It's still okay to plant the beans in day 3. We can still get them by the Egg Festival. The only problem is normally we would just be taking one item, the cauliflower, to finish the bundle. Now we have to take 2, the cauliflower and the beans, because the beans won't be done until that day. As well, Pierre's is closed on Wednesdays, so we can't even get it from Pierre's. We have to get it from Joe Jamart or whatever. And we only have 4 gold to start with. So now we have to include in that, we got to go find some money. So but getting back to, well, what happened? What can we do as a postmortem? How do we go back and say we got to do it better next time? We'd like to suggest some systemic changes, right? So we want to be careful, because if we're responding immediately and people know that it's something that we weren't happy about, there's probably going to be some defensiveness. But after the tensions have settled, we can just get down to what was the root cause, and is there some way we can mitigate it or avoid it next time. So the point of the 5 whys is to get past symptoms and get to what was actually affecting the problems. So the notion being the first couple of whys we'll probably get to, well, because it was cold out, because of this, something's very symptomatic. And that eventually, after asking the whys, like, why does that matter that it was cold out, we're going to get to, okay, this is really at the heart of the issue. There's nothing magic about 5 other than it's bigger than 1 or 2. So in our situation, we want to get past, why did we not buy the green beet starters? The first response is going to be, we forgot, or we didn't have room in our inventory, both of which are true, but they don't really get to the root cause. So each of these start a thread that we could follow to get to the root cause. So for example, if we forgot, then what reminders were in place? What priority did it have to get the green beans? Were we more concerned about the parsnips? What became more important and why? That sort of thing. But as well, for the second one, we could say, why didn't we have room? Should we have tried to get the backpack sooner? Probably not realistic. Should we have sold some stuff? Should we have stopped fishing earlier so that there was more room? I forget if it was fish in the way. But should we have done something before that? Essentially, the 5 p.m. decision to better set up the 2 a.m. decision. It's important to include all the stakeholders. It's really hard for me. The only stakeholders really in this situation is me and Av, which is really me. So it's important to include all the stakeholders. The 2 of us, me and Av, being the same person especially, are not going to do a great job of this. other than we're going to be happy that we agree, that sort of thing. But for my part, what I can understand from this based on my experience, I'd say um, part of the issue might have been we were trying to do too much and then just include a stop off at Pierre's on the way home rather than making a dedicated destination. Maybe it was important for the green beans to be a dedicated destination so that we didn't have to deal with this and we would have room in our backpack, etc. But all of this really to highlight the complexities or the effectiveness or the sort of the intricacies of the 5 whys, which is really actually a very good tool. So the only thing I want to sort of reiterate here is when we get back to this urgency, the fact that it's labeled a tool and management thinks that it's, if they've seen it do any good at all, they're going to say, oh, you got to use that 5 Ys and get back to the root cause. And the truth is, you get a lot more out of the exercise, when you're listening. And stakeholders usually aren't ready to talk right away, especially if there's social response bias. I was once doing this after we had a fire. Oh, train's going by! Yay! After we had a fire in a factory that I was working, and of course nobody wants to talk about what they were doing to contribute to the fire. So you gotta take a little more subtle approach. And really, the best results come from a much slower approach and a much softer approach. So that's just something to think of. So okay, we covered those 3 things. We covered the process view. We covered 5S, and I didn't realize we'd head to the 2 5s, and 5 Ys. Now we're going to set up Av to carry forward. So the focus we're going to have on day 3, what we want to set up as planning or as scheduling for Av once we go into the factory. Um, Based on the green bean situation, we have a bit of an emergency. If we don't get the beans planted today, we're sort of forsaking 1200G, right? So that's the difference. If we get the bundle on the day of the egg festival, and we get the speed grow fertilizer that helps the strawberries, the difference between having the speed grow and not having the speed grow is 1200. So that's what at stake. If we get it the next day, the speed grow still is valuable. We can apply it to the strawberries that we've already planted, and even if we plant the strawberries a day later, we don't get the second harvest or the third harvest that we'd want. So we set up a little project plan. The first thing we have to do is go fishing and sell the catch to at least get the 150 we need to pay for the beans when we buy them at Joja Mart. The second thing is we have to go and buy the beans for 150 rather than the regular. I think it's one. I think it's 120, 60 each or something like that. But they're now 75 each at the Georgia Mart. And then we're going to plant 2 starters at the farm. The second thing we're going to sort of schedule or focus on is the 5S tapper area. So in that area where we're going to set up the tappers, we're going to have do a little 5S and set up at least the first 3. We're going to sort, we're going to sweep, we're going to clear out, set things in order, and create some sort of system that can work. And we're going to leave it to Av to say, if you want to move a tree over, whatever, as long as you understand what system you want to put in place, that's the right thing to do. And then the last thing, sort of nice but less priority, is that project we're talking about, the tide pool. So where possible, we're going to try and use whatever energy we have left over to collect 300 wood and connect to the tide pool. So that's the lead up. Av, over to you. Okay, thanks, Dino. That was a good setup. So yeah, we have some recovery to do. Certainly, one of the first things we want to. That's Pierce Hopper today. Excellent. One of the first things we want to do is get to fishing. Let's check to see if there's any crows. So crows are a bit of a pain until we get. Actually, we may have lost one there. Until we get to the point where we get level 1 and can make scare. Oh, there's a daffodil. Let's get that. Till we get scarecrows, then I feel a lot better, but no more, just a daffodil. Um, so we want to we'll store this daffodil. We will get down to the ocean, do some fishing. We could do fishing anywhere, I'm sure, but it's nice to do it at the ocean at this point because we're going to immediately sell it to Willie. So that facilitates that pretty quick. And then it's just a quick run to Joja Mart and then back around. um, to plant them and to do the 5S project and to finish off with the 300 wood so we could finish the type access. So we're going to get an early start on this one. Early bird gets the worm, they say. I don't know if I got a worm out on this one. But yeah, they don't use worms. They use some crazy bug bait, I think. But yeah, there's Willie. Hi, Willie. And he's just getting some fishing in before the day starts. Hopefully, we'll get something good. So I'm in that little second spot, that second berth, if you will. I used to go to that first one because it was just easier to walk into. What I find is at the end of the day, oh, we got a sardine, nice. At the end of the day, when Willie's done, sometimes he will use that spot, and we get into a little tussle about who should be there. So, just out of habit, if nothing else, I've started to go to the second little hole there. Now, if I had seen the little bubbles to show you like active fish, I would have gone there. But I don't see any, so we'll just take what we can here. Hopefully, the luck that we're getting today will help. Um, yeah, just some buzzing. I'm running the video a little faster. I'll probably chop the video as well, just to make it a little easier. So we got an anchovy that time. So I should have probably kept like the list of the ocean fish and how much they're worth in front of me so I could do the calculus to say when is a good time to stop fishing. I mean, notionally I have that idea, but it would be nice if I had the list in front of me so that I knew, all right, we've got enough, we can leave, timing's good. Uh, that one's on me. Oh, some seaweed. So yeah, seaweed is if you're looking to eat, the value of seaweed isn't. It's a little better for eating than it is for selling. Having said that, it's still not as good as spring onions. So if you have spring onions, do those for. Oh, halibut! I like halibut. It's good. Good return on halibut. So yeah, if you run out of your spring onions, then eating um, green algae or seaweed is a good alternative before you get into like the leek and the horseradish, etc., 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 etc. So, oh, sometimes I will go for the treasure. Now, in this case, I need the fish, but sometimes I'll go to the treasure, even if it means risking the fish a bit. But we're going to stick with the fish this time. And another halibut. Excellent. So we still have room. Again, if I had the list of fish, we probably have enough money here. But if I had the list of fish and what their values were, I could probably just quickly figure out. I have figured out on a spreadsheet how to do it quickly, but I don't have that spreadsheet in front of me. We will talk about sort of the IT system behind what I use and what IT systems mean. There's a herring. What's good, what's bad, what to trust, what not to trust, that sort of thing. That's all coming later in the course. And I like to use spreadsheets. I'm a spreadsheet kind of guy, but as most ops, I think most ops people are. But hopefully, some of that will transfer over to you as a viewer, as a listener, as a follower to pick up on some of my tricks. That's all about what education should be. Okay, got another anchovy. Think we're good. Let's sell. See what we got. There goes the sardine gold. Couple anchovy. Couple halibut. Oh, 314. It's a fish pie. 3.14. So we'll make our way. We're going to take sort of the back route towards Joja Mart, just from the standpoint it's not that much less efficient, and it exposes us if there is more foraging stuff, especially if we have a little extra luck today. There might be some more foraging items that are behind, sort of off the beaten path. I guess it could have even gone around Gunther's, but around the archaeology museum. But we're going to go around, stop in, pay a little extra for our I think it's normally 60 each. Here it's going to be 75. Eh, what can you do? Hi, Shane. But we're going to make our way back. So from here, we're going to check the board, but then we're going to take the long way, so I'll leave that off. What's on the board here? Ah, Leah wants a sunfish. We can do that. Okay, we'll pause it here. Okay, we're coming back. We picked up some forage items along the way. You can see a couple of daffodils, a couple wild horseradish. That's always nice on the back path. But now on either side of that tree there, the maple tree, we're going to place. Now you got to be careful chopping down trees or pickaxing rocks near what you've planted, because if the axe or the pickaxe hit what you've planted, it's not there anymore. Even with the pickaxe, I think it just takes away the tilled dirt, and you have to start tilling it again. But so we've planted the two green beans. That's a good thing. Hopefully no crows eat, at least not both of them. And hopefully we remember to, yeah, we actually went to put it in the chest, we ended up putting it in the ground, so we went to recover that. But so if we miss a watering of the beans, then they won't be ready in time. Hopefully we'll get at least one, and the crows will not eat it, and everything's good. But now we're getting into, this is the second step. This is the 5S part. We want to convert this area to be visibly good for tappers. So first thing I have to do is clear out everything that's here. We're going to get rid of that pine tree. We don't need a pine tree right away, probably not until fall, but we'll plant it now. We're going to plant it sort of in the corner of the house there. Um, there we go. We only need one. We typically don't tap more than one pine tree. We will tap early on. We'll tap some maple, so when we need those. But the workhorse really is going to be oak. We need 3 oak or more along the busy season. So we'll get some acorns. We don't have any acorns yet to plant our oak, so we're gonna chop down a couple oak trees. And that's going to give us the acorns we need to plant as well. We're trying to group seeds into, having one acorn, one pine, and one maple seed. We can group those into a field snack, which is the cheapest form of energy. I mean, given that you can't sell it, I'd rather eat a field snack than even a spring onion. You can give it away. Alex actually likes field snacks, so if you give it to Alex, that's good. But I'm not going to make a ton and give them all to Alex. I'm just going to use them for my own food. So what I've done in the past is left that maple there and moved everything just at one over right. That tends to crowd the cat bowl. So this time I'm moving it a little, just one over. The other thing that's worth noting is you can't get 2 trees to full grown next to each other. So that's why I'm leaving the space between. As well, it opens it up so that if I see any seeds growing, any tree seeds growing, I'm going to get rid of them because they're only going to get in the way. So this is the bigger part of the 5S is cleaning. Oh, I got a geode. Is clearing up all the area so that I can see it if anything starts to grow, if anything changes, so that I can bring it back to what I want until enough other stuff changes on the sustain side that we want to change or adapt. So we're in a good situation. We'll probably get, I want to keep the maple sort of close in case we need them for seeds making fields. We're putting the walkways help speed wise, certainly in front of the house here. I'll typically get that in early, and the fact that we had already sort of chopped, pickaxe some stones sort of made sense there. So, but for now, we're going to focus on getting the right seeds. Again, there's at least one more maple we want to plant. We're not probably not going to do it today because we want to get the maple, the pine cones, and the acorns sufficient so that we can get energy, hopefully to get the 300 wood that we need before the end of this. And if there's still time at the end, after we get the 300 wood, it'd be nice to go down to the beach, fix the causeway or whatever it is to the tide pools, so that we have access to tide pools. Run over there, get the forage items that we can today. Um, but if we run out of time, that's not the end of the world either. Certainly as close to the 300 as we can, so that we can fix that up in the morning. The only thing that really, again, we're probably not going to run out of time. If anything, we're going to run out of energy because we're constantly trying to go sort of field snack to field snack one at a time, which is just chewing up all of our time. But again, the constraint really isn't so much the time as the energy to manage that we have enough energy we don't pass out along the way. If we do get too low, it gives us the sluggish notion. I hate the sluggish notion. So it gives us a little frowny face, says that it's we're being sluggish. And when you eat food, it sort of brings that back, but it keeps the sluggish notion in so that even when we go to bed at night, we don't recover as well. So I want to avoid that as much as I can. It's a bit of a pain, but we're good. So we need a few more. We got some pine cones. We picked up some acorns. Now we need a maple to balance them out. And I know that I'm going to be expanding with the barns and the coops in this direction, so that's a good place to sort of take trees from. We went down to the stump because we know the seed's going to come before the stump comes. Um, it's not terrible to leave a stump on the farm, but you don't want to leave a stump off outside of the farm because if you cut down a tree off of the farm, it's going to grow back. If you cut it down the stump and leave the stump, it's not going to grow back. So you don't get sort of the use of that extra wood or that extra tree kind of thing. So on the stump, I don't mind. On the farm, I don't mind so much. But off the farm, you want to clear it up as much as you can so a new one will grow sooner than later. So, okay, we want to dump off what we don't need. We still want to yeah, we're going to have some seaweed. Like I said, if we're out of spring onions, seaweed is a good option to eat. Give us a little bit of energy. There's one more we can push on, but I'd like to focus more on the seeds. Keep sort of, as well using the seeds. We're going to chop wood if we can. That's going to give us the experience in foraging. That's going to give us the wood that we need. And occasionally it's going to give us the right seed match so that we can build the food that we need. Sorry, for um, the snack there, field snack. So it's nice to clear off some of the air. I like to wait until I get a silo, so a lot of this gets converted to hay. But for now, it helps us to expose what seeds that we see or even what branches we see so we can clean them up a bit faster. So that'll help. Um, Now we have one of each. We can go back and make a field snack. And how are we doing? Just over 250 on the wood. Sort of limping along. I guess it's sort of hand to mouth. Axe to field snack, if that makes sense. We have the two acorns. We want a pine cone, and we want a maple, at least. Now you'll notice in some cases when you chop stuff down, you'll see some of the wood float over the water for a second or two. That doesn't mean that it floats. It just means it's waiting to see if you're going to take it before the lake swallows it. So you got to be quick about those. We're doing pretty good on the wood, but it's getting late. I don't think this is going to work out. So we're going to try and get a maple seed here, which will complete the three for the field snack. Okay, we have 298. So close. Let's get the other two. It's not going to kill us to get the other two. But we certainly won't have time to go to the beach. So it did. We said our walking times was 40 minutes to the beach if we're trying to be speedy. So 40 minutes there, 40 minutes back. We would kind of just make it. But if the intention is to go there, fix it, pick up some forage items, and then come back, it's not going to work. So we know the numbers. We're not going to push it. And we have 300. That's awesome. And an extra field stack. So, okay, time for bed. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Dino. Carry on. Okay. Well, thanks, Av. We're just going to do basically the recap for day 3. We fixed the green bean problem, so hopefully we won't get affected by crows, at least not to lose both of them. And hopefully remember to water every day, because if you miss a watering day, we're not going to have them in time. But at least we've gotten them in the ground. So we've covered that. As far as the getting all that done, the 5S area, still some stuff to work on. It's not something that you have to do overnight, but you still have to plan early. Certainly when you're growing trees, because you want them to grow in the right position. Some trees were left, certainly the maple trees, some of them were left because we probably won't have full-size maple by the time we want them. So that's a work in process. The collect 300 wood. We did get the 300 wood. Yes, excellent. We didn't get to the tide pool though, so we'll have to do that tomorrow. That'll be part of the thing. We'll need to take them to the beach and apply that so we can start collecting all that extra forage. I also wanted to do a bit of a recap of where we are on the course. So we talked about strategy. That was on day 2. Uh, Basically, it helps us focus trade-offs so that we don't counter any of the effects of other people's trade-offs, because everyone in the organization is doing trade-offs. We don't want them to run in different directions or even stuff that we've done before. So having some spot on the horizon, it doesn't have to be super specific, but at least it focuses everyone so that we know which direction we're moving in and we're all moving in the same direction. So under the topic of management, really the 2 a.m. versus the 5 p.m. decision, the planning versus the doing, getting into a bit of that. And that leaves, this is probably under management as well, analysis. So then we get to what analysis that we've done. On the accounting side, basically, we're looking at the sell value versus the energy value if you're going to eat some product. So, for example, if I have a spring onion or 10 spring onions or whatever, and I have 10 leek, I'll probably get more energy out of the 10 leek, but I can sell the 10 leek for a lot more money. So I'm better off eating the spring onions where possible. So we also talked about how that spring seed bundle, I don't know if you'd call it a bundle, but putting a daffodil, a dandelion, a leek, and a wild horseradish together for spring seed sounds like a good idea for planting. It's a really good idea for selling. Because now each seed is 35, so one of each of those 4 will give us 350 or 10 seeds. And then you think, oh, great, we'll sell them. We'll plant them and we'll get even more. But at that point, when you're planting them, they're now worth 35 cents each. You're better off just selling them. So we made an exception on the first day because we want to make sure that we have the 4 for the bundles. This comes back to the strategy of the community center. So we can give an exception on the first day because by planting them, we are getting the return. We could sell them for 35, but then we may not have them for the bundles later on where we get 3 and then that money comes in earlier. So it's not a bad idea on the first day, with the notion that hopefully we'll be able to forage each of those items again before once we open the community center and have them. If not, it's at most a day or 2 before they come up from the ground, and then we can use those as a backstop. Also on the accounting, talked a little bit about the internal rate of return versus the gold or G per day per plot. If we're planting things, strawberry has a really good gold per plot per day. Cauliflower has a reasonable gold per plot per day, but certainly the spring seeds and parsnips do not. However, because parsnips are so short to plant, there's only 4 days, they can help us expand our money a lot faster. So the question becomes, if you've reached your capacity, then go with the cauliflower. go with the strawberry where possible. But if you have not reached the capacity yet, if you have room for more plots, you're better off planting parsnips and getting that quick return and then using that money to plant more. So that's going to be something that comes up more or less pretty constant, whether we're looking for that quick return or whether we're looking for that basically a lot of money steady kind of thing. Uh, we also talked about capacity planning. We didn't call it capacity planning, but we got into the process times, how long it takes to water, and what that means for how many we can actually expect to water over a long period of time. We also talked about walking times and how much we can expect to accomplish. For example, at the end just now, Av was saying that we had all the wood we needed, but if we calculated even a good time to get to the tide pools was 40 minutes, if you had 40 minutes there, 40 minutes back, plus a little bit of faffing, we were not going to be able to get to bed in time. So understanding those things so that we can make the right decisions really helps. So um, that's as far as we've gotten the course. We're going to continue. Day 4 has some more things going on. Certainly, we'll finish that tide pool. Eventually, we'll get to the mines, and they're going to give us more options to do different things. But as well, eventually we'll get into the community center and we can really start organizing bundles and knocking, sort of checking the boxes so that we can get that done. But more to come. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. Let me know in the comments coming back. As far as what works, what doesn't work, I'll try and incorporate as much of that as I can. Other than that, it's Dino the Ops Guy signing off. Take care.